Good morning and welcome to HMG Live. I'm Hunter Muller, lead principal of HMG Strategy. My team and I are delighted to be here with you today virtually and excited for today's program. So just a little bit about HMG and our pivot. Committed to giving you the best thought leadership around innovation, leading in a crisis, helping you think through transformation, reimagining, reinventing the global enterprise. Today, we have Monica Caldas from Liberty Mutual, Global CIO of retail markets, some $29 billion. We've been tracking Monica now for some time from GE. She's an amazing thought leader, a true champion of leadership, and an amazing tech executive. Monica, welcome to the program here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I love that you're doing this, and I'm ecstatic to be a part of it.
Well, it's interesting as we're all like, look, we're all going through this major recalculation and readjustment to our professional and personal life work style. And that's kind of like a different angle on the whole HMG model. It's all about making you a professional success, but underneath that, we all have a personal story, right? Our personal journey. And I don't know about you, Monica, but for me, major adjustments. We're broadcasting here from our Vermont studio here at Killington, Vermont, oddly enough. Actually, I find my thinking is really clear and really helps me drive some major innovation for HMG. I've done Zoom calls now, I think, for probably 3 hours this morning. On a professional level, and two threads, professional and personal, if you feel open to sharing about that as you share your journey, your success story. It's really quite amazing. Just a little context before we get into your current role, a little context of your experience in your whole career ascent, your experience at GE, and what prepared you for this next adventure with Liberty.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, first of all, as I myself tried to manage the journey of now being a part-time school teacher. I have 2 small kids. But I agree with you. I think all our life experiences kind of set us up for what's ahead of us in many ways, different shapes and sizes. Personally, I came to the United States when I was 8 with my parents and watched them be chasing the American dream as an immigrant. And I still tell this story today that I became the family spokesperson because I spoke English. And so I was always the negotiator of all things, because at that point it was not a, pick option 2 on the phone to speak Spanish. It was just English. And so I started negotiating contracts and things, and my dad would say to me in Portuguese and I would translate it in English, and I think a year into it, I was like, I got this. So there's a lot of resiliency that I personally watched as my parents overcame obstacles of not speaking the language, coming here and living in a basement and not having, resources, but ultimately coming out ahead of that. And so as I watched that, I grew up surrounded by that and learned there is no obstacle that's insurmountable. You have to be creative because answers don't come easily. And also, when one door closes, you got to push your way and open another one. So always keep pushing and always look for facts and not rely on history and folklore to determine where you go. So be creative, be open-minded. And I think that set me up as I went to college and pursued technology. And I believe I was one of 2 girls in my class. And there was always a lot of conversation about that. And going into the tech world, and I was part of GE, so I was very lucky to be part of a company that was early on the scene around diversity and inclusion. But all that training, I think, set me up for what we're dealing with today.
Oh, interesting. Excellent, Monica. Thank you. I noticed a caller mentioned that there's a little distortion in the feed from your end. Maybe if we slow down our delivery, that'll help.
Okay.
And, just one last click down on family, what you learned from your family, because I think it's so interesting as you go through the decades in your career. And I'm now into this 35 years, and I think back to my mom and dad and the conversations in the morning or on vacation or over dinner, and how much of the foundational view of the world happened in that family unit as you grew up, and how appreciative I was. My dad was a really successful entrepreneur and a great communicator, and great in building and trusted relationships and a community. What were the lessons you learned in that family unit that have propelled you to this level?
Yeah. So I will go a little slower in hopes that my connection keeps up. So thank you for that feedback. So, to answer your question, I'm an only child, which means that I would sit at the table with my parents, and most of the conversation was adult level conversation that I learned to listen and then eventually have opinions about. But I do remember sitting at the dinner table and my parents talking about, we don't have money for this. How are we going to create this future that we want? And talking about obstacles and how do you think about breaking them down and solving them one at a time. I think those are key capabilities that I learned at a very young age, watching them go through that process and me sitting back and saying, okay, you got to break things down to the smallest pieces, because then you can solve for those, and don't be overwhelmed by the bigger component of it. So I think that so valuable, and I watched that in so many different ways as we had, family members in Portugal that were getting ill and we couldn't afford a plane ticket to go see them. And how do you navigate that? There was no video at the time. There's no internet at the time. So maybe I'm dating myself, but you do have to then think about personally, how do you overcome some of those challenges? So I think all of that instilled in me maybe a foundation that I'm now going back to, and maybe even throughout my career in times of crisis, I've relied on to think about, okay, let's just break it down to the smallest piece. How do we overcome this together? I think the last lesson that I would share would be that you're never alone, and that you have to be open to asking for help. I remember my parents talking about friends that they could rely on, and I don't know, that was instilled, that sense of community. And community doesn't mean just the person next to you, it's broad. And I definitely learned that working at GE for 17 years, global company. Community was a network of people from any part of the world that could come together and solve problems virtually. And we're definitely seeing that today. And I think all of us are experiencing that simultaneously, whether you've done it before or not. You're now thrust into this new mechanism of community. And what does that mean?
Thank you, Monica. When you think about, the crisis that we're moving through here, and you think about leading people, and you probably have hundreds of thousands that work in your organization, plus external contractors, how do you push out fear and help people view things in context correctly with the right kind of weighting scale? And then how are you inspiring your people to feel up and good about what they're doing, working remotely, working from home, part, like you said, school teacher, part IT leader?
Yeah. So we have 50,000 people across Liberty Mutual that are operating 900 different locations globally. We, for the global retail markets division, which I'm responsible for, we have about 30,000. And we have to enact about 15 BCP plans all at the same time, more or less. I think my organizations in Asia started enacting them earlier. So that is a shot of adrenaline, if I ever had to describe what that feels like. And so, of course, all kinds of emotions come with that. I like to describe it as a roller coaster of emotions. And as a leader, I have to also remind my leadership team that we are not all going to navigate the emotion roller coaster at the same time in unison. And we have to recognize that Maybe I have been through turbulence more, and therefore I get through it faster and I get into action faster, but maybe others don't. And so how do you have empathy for all of the team members at whatever level of or range of emotions they may be in? So as a leader, recognizing that people may be in a different place than you, and how do you inspire them? How do you meet them where they are? Recognizing where are they? Are they in fear mode still? Are they in get ready to climb the mountain mode? You know, where they are, and then navigate your set, you know, from your toolkit. We all have toolkits that we've developed over time. You know, reach into that toolkit and find the appropriate response for the right team. So for example, my team in China, I was in Singapore and Hong Kong the very beginning of the year, and right after I left, COVID started to emerge as a bigger issue. And so that was in January. We're now in March. The team is starting to go back into the office. They are in a very different state of mind than my team in the US or Ecuador, Colombia, or Brazil, who are just starting to get onto the stages of that initial shock of having to reassess and work differently. So how do you do that across the globe in parallel with a leadership team that has to solve for that? I think one of the keys that I recommend is really listen, number one. Two, you're a leader with a lot of toolkits in your toolkit. Use all tools, different methods of communication, different levels of pace. I think those are all things that I'm using simultaneously, which is draining. I definitely feel more drained at the end of the day.
So a little further in leading through a crisis, what are some key ideas that you can impart or principles that are working for you now?
Yeah, so I think, so I started my career, I think a couple of weeks before 9/11 happened, and I was working in Stamford, Connecticut, and I was able to watch how the leadership team responded. And the first thing they did was empathy. How do we help? And then I got to experience the crisis in 2008 when I was at GE Capital. Again, responding with empathy. How can we help? How do we support each other? And so that's been instilled in me in, you know, how do you lead through a crisis? Number one, have empathy, support the team first and foremost, make sure that you can support your customers. There's going to be decisions you make that are less than optimal, but they are for the right purpose and the right outcome, which is supporting your team and your customers. So make those decisions, and then you'll navigate through the consequences of those later. For example, we were able to turn on, in the US alone, with my business unit and our risk solutions business unit, about 30,000 employees working from home in a matter of a week or two. That was a lot of quick, creative problem solving. Maybe not that we've done in other times where you have more time to strategize. So I think one of the recommendations I make is, how do you make quick decision making? So in crisis, recognize that it's a different period. The other piece I learned from 2008, which a book that I love, it's called Team of Teams by General Stanley McChrystal, came out a couple years ago. But he talks about what we talk about in management, network structures, right? Which is mission-based teams, which is in a time of crisis, it's even more important to forget hierarchies, forget organizational parameters and boundaries, and focus more on what's the outcome, what's the North Star, what's the mission that you're on. We need to make sure we enable our teams. We need to make sure we support our customers. Get the team that needs to do that in place, regardless of what function they report into or what skill. So I think in crisis mode, the third tip I would say is focus on a mission and orient your team to solve that mission. And I think many people are doing this without really recognizing it. But it's also opportunity to learn, and how do you apply some of these when you get to the other side of the situation. And I think the other side of the situation, team of teams, empathy, solving for customers and employees, those are all things that we should be doing anyway. But I think crisis just brings those to the surface. It forces us, the dynamic we're in, forces us to look at that more closely. And as leaders, we're forced to ask ourselves, how well are we doing at solving for that on a regular basis?
Excellent, Monica. Love the references and the principles. Right, spot on. When you think about leading a large organization, thousands of people, how are you sure the messages are getting through to your team and they feel empowered to interface with the business and carry that message forward?
Yeah, I think that's so challenging because everyone receives messages differently. So we have a robust communication process that we're using, which includes all channels, email, chat, phone calls, check-ins, a lot of communication. I would say number one in a crisis mode is over-communicate rather than under-communicate if you have to make a choice between the two. I also think you've got to communicate with honesty, transparency, and really talk about the realities of what is in front of you and what potentially is ahead of you. And so you're right, communicating across, 2,500 employees in my group in 15 countries, different time zones. I am definitely doing calls at all hours of the day and night to make sure that I have one-on-one conversations, small group conversations, whatever it takes to make sure people understand what is our number one priority. We make it clear. We say, I know we have a lot of work to do on our day-to-day, but right now, number one is enabling our employees so that we can serve our customers. So be super clear. So have a clear mission we're all on. So clarity, communicating in various channels. And then number three is solicit feedback. Does this make sense? Did the information I give you help you? Because ultimately what I want to do and what my goal is, enable my team to make decisions on the edge. We talk about, my old world and IoT devices and data on the edge. Communication on the edge, right? They need to have everything they need, the resources they need, the information they need, so that they're not waiting for a leader in some location to give direction and instructions. They have to know where are we going, what's our mission, and know that I say to my team, I don't expect perfection. It's not realistic in any kind of situation anyway. And so do the best you can. We'll recover together. I have your back. And I think as a leader, the most important thing to say to our teams that are working so hard, especially the technology teams, the talent teams, as we get our folks ready, and of course our frontline employees that are working with customers, make the best decision you can. We have your back. And so how do you create that space and that energy for your team to operate? And so that's what we're doing. And then of course soliciting the feedback to see, does this resonate? Are there clarifications I can give, and just be continuously available to my team?
Monica, sounds so spot on, brilliant. When you think about giving yourself feedback, assessing where you are on your roadmap within the context of the crisis, how do you get real-time feedback for yourself? Are you focused on the right areas for the company, for the business, for the marketplace, the customers, and your team? How do you have that real-time feedback loop?
Well, I am a technologist, so a lot of monitoring in place. When we look at our tools working, right, monitoring the connections, the VPN, all those good things that we like to do. I think that monitoring is both tactical and strategic. So the tactical numbers, seeing them flow, can information flow at various levels, both in the systems landscape as well as through human. So that's number one. I think number two is, how do we make sure that we're listening? It's not just about us communicating, but us stopping and listening. And so we're trying to create these different forums where we can get feedback real time. And we coming with no answers. We're coming with just to learn. Because look, we're humans. We're not perfect. We're not going to say the perfect thing. We're not going to make the perfect decision. But if we set our expectations with each other that we're doing the best we can, we all have positive intent, that sets the stage for how do we work together. And then from there, you can build on the trust you already have and go from there. And so then it should create a continuous feedback loop that is not as filtered as maybe it traditionally could have been.
Excellent.
So,
and when you think, Monica, of putting this in context, the role of the CIO, how important is the role of the CIO in the enterprise now? And do titles matter? CIO, CDO, CTO. The role of CIO, it's got to be the best time ever to be a CIO and the best time ever to be in the technology profession, right? Let's lean. Let's lean into it. Let's lead courageously. Let's think innovatively.
yeah.
Let's keep the lights on and keep things moving. Connect the world through digital platforms and tools, and let's be that rock star in the line of business, the C-suite, and the board, right?
Yeah, of course. I love it. So, I chose a technology path because I 100% believe in the power of what technology can do. And ever since I started down this journey of a career in tech, I never looked back, because I think it's amazing when you tie together solving problems with technology, and the fact that technology can accelerate the problem-solving mechanisms. It's super powerful. So all the things you said, I of course am biased, but do believe this is the best time. Although if I were to look back, I've always thought it's always the best time to be in technology, because we can intersect across all the functions, right? More than anyone, we touch every function in our operation. I always say this to my team: you see everything. Therefore, we are at the intersection, which means we can voice perspectives that maybe others don't see it in the same way. And I think that's super powerful to bring that to the table, to speak up, to lean into that and not be shy. Of course, I think every function is equally important and has a place in that C-suite table, right? When you think about the crisis we're going through now and looking at the talent and making sure our employees are okay and taken care of. When you think about finance and making sure we project out where this is going, what does that mean for our ability to support our customers? So everyone has a place for sure, but I am biased. I think this is a great time to be in technology, as always. However, it is a time of tremendous responsibility. We've always had a lot on our shoulders, but I think now more than ever, when you think about people are now distributed more than ever. I was looking at some stats and I was amazed that in the US, only about 3%, I think it covers between different age groups, but 3 to 5% of the population work from home regularly, more than part-time, where in Finland, I think they had the best at 14%. And now we're all close to, what is it, 80? So think about the weight on all technology folks' shoulders to support that, to enable that. It's incredible. But more importantly than that is the ability for all our organizations, regardless of what function you're in, to increase our digital IQ. And I talk about that. I talked about that when I joined Liberty. And that has been one of our cultural transformation elements, which is how do you get everybody speaking more technology speak and comfortable with it, right? That digital IQ across everybody.
So it's perfect. So it's been well said that don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
What are you doing in pivoting your organization, in addition to all the collaboration and the video support? What are you doing with this crisis and helping your company be better going forward?
Yeah. I think we have tremendous opportunity, and it fluctuates with where in the world you're in. If you're in Malaysia or Vietnam and the culture is oriented towards more face-to-face and manual process where you actually print documents, and even some government regulators want printed material, it's very different than if you're in China and everything's digital. Last time I was in China, in Q4 of last year, I couldn't even buy coffee with money. So you know, it's different. You have to be able to respond to the local component, to where you are locally with global scale. So that's been one of my biggest strategic transformations that I've been trying to lead at Liberty Mutual since I joined with my organization is how do we accelerate digital transformation globally with balancing that for where the local market is at. So for us, we've been on that mission. And I can say that, for example, in Asia, we moved most of our workloads to the cloud. So I'm close to 100% there in the cloud, minus some regulatory constraints. So how do we do more of that? So that's, you know, the back end, the infrastructure side. On the front end, in terms of business process, I think this is a tremendous opportunity to test some ideas that were already in flight and we were piloting. And how do you now go back to our teams, cross-functional teams, and say, this is unprecedented, but it does create the opportunity for you to see how it could work. Because you're testing it live, there's really no choice. So while you're testing it, let's take notes. Let's learn from it. And let's, as the world returns to some level of normalcy, which that is yet to be determined what exactly that is, we can fast track some ideas we previously were just testing and make them permanent. And so I'm having the team make a list of that. How do we accelerate some of the tracks we already had in our digital transformation list across the globe, not just US? How do we learn or maybe bring solutions that are active today in places around the world and bring them to places that were not yet ready for them, but maybe this culturally creates a dynamic where people are ready, customers are ready for this. We have virtual claims capabilities where people can take pictures of their auto and send it in, and we assess it virtually as an example. So
has the pandemic changed the C-suite focus for you and your short list?
You know, I think the pandemic definitely prioritized our list in terms of employee tools. I think we, of course, are very focused on giving customers tools that they can work with and help them. But in forcing everyone to work virtually, you have to now think about, am I placing enough investment in employee tools? And I think we've been doing a really nice job with that. But globally, there are pockets of opportunities. So I'm definitely thinking about that. But, you know, the good news, if I just think about my team in China, they were able to quickly adapt to working remotely and our capacity sustained. And so our ability to keep moving forward with the goals we had in place is tremendous. I've been very pleased with how they were able to do that. And now we're having conversations at the global scale with what are some tips that they can share with other markets that we're in to be able to support teams, to maybe operate in a way that we haven't before, that enables us to support our families, as well as continue to stay engaged with work and make sure we're there for our customers.
Excellent. Are you okay if we open up to some questions?
Sure, let's take a shot at it.
The questions will come in here, hopefully in the near future. We have over 75 people online right now. You know, when you think of a word to inspire people through this time, any thoughts there?
One word. Can I have two words? I'm going to go with fast decisions. Fast decisions. I think personally, I've always said to my teams, we will never have perfect information. I think I made peace with that many years ago. And so you will not have perfect information. Make peace with that. Get the most information you can, but then make a decision and move on and be able to continuously optimize on that decision. But you have to make sure you set everyone's expectations. Be open and transparent. I always say to my team, and I use this, here's my confidence level with my answer to you. I'm 40% confident, I'm 60%, whatever it may be. and look, let's optimize. As we learn more, let's maybe change gears, let's tune it. But I would say two words that apply now more than ever, but I think always are applicable, which is fast decisions.
So speed matters, right? Speed matters when you're looking to pivot or grow an organization or change a direction. What is it about our industry that there is that latency in the individuals, right, communicating and connecting and driving that kind of thought process? What is it about? I mean, you've led for years. What's your take on the whole stack of the IT organization?
Yeah, I always, you know what I attribute it to, because I've had this conversation before. I think it's just the engineering brain that the process-oriented mechanism that we have either been trained to or maybe naturally have or developed over time. I'm not quite sure, but that process-oriented, that's like that if then, and you try to get all the permutations of if then, and try to make all these paths, if this, then that, okay, what about if that doesn't go that way, what do you do? And so this ultimate approach to decision making that is maybe born out of some of those training and mechanisms of engineering, I think sometimes hinders us in our quest for perfection or maybe the best optimal path. But I think experience tells us that isn't reality. Life throws a lot of curveballs at you when you're least expecting it. We're in the middle of one now. And so I would say, how do we remember this and teach our children and folks that are just coming into the workforce about not allowing perfection to slow you down, enabling us as leaders also to be vulnerable with, I don't have perfect information, but here's what I think we should do. And look, we're all in this together. We'll figure it out. We'll tune it. We'll optimize. We'll overcome it if we are on the same page about how we're solving the problem together.
Thank you, Monica. Here's a question from Chris Stetler, a friend from the DC market. What has been your biggest surprise to date in this new normal, and how did you overcome it?
You know, I shouldn't say this is a surprise, but I'll be vulnerable with you and say the pace of change in some of the markets, for example, India, where things were kind of steadily going along, and then overnight there were government closures. And my team had to figure out how we were going to get the tools to our team members. And of course we say, okay, let's get our laptops from the office if they didn't bring it home. And no, you cannot. We were stopped by the police. No, you cannot go in. And how do you start to do creative problem solving through that process? And this is one of my late night meetings, working with a team. We had plan A, we had plan B, and we had plan C. All of those plans required a small detail, which was some people going into the office. And when that became, when that changed overnight, we didn't have a space and time to operate to overcome that. And so the pace that this is moving, I think, is unprecedented. There's been many crises, I mentioned a couple, but I think the pace of change can be overwhelming because you think you can just do your plan A, B, or C, and then all of a sudden you're like, all those out the window. Let's think of plan D. So I would say that's maybe my biggest surprise.
Thank you. And then, okay, if this is from Don Griffin, really good question. And it kind of relates to working remotely as well. How do you cut through like the smoke and get to what's real, almost to the point where it's a tough conversation, might even require a bit of an intervention. How do you do it now in a remote style, in a remote workforce?
Yeah, it's tough. And I would say, if you're just starting to build trust today, you're too late. You have to build trust with people before the crisis happens. I would say that is really important, and probably one of the reasons that we've been able to act so quickly is that we have been working on building trust with our teams for a very long time. And so I would say, how do you create interventions? How do you get in there and really support people at this time of need. You won't know that you need to do that if you don't have the trust and they can openly tell you that they're struggling or they have an obstacle they don't know how to solve. And so one of my personal guiding principles is to be open, transparent, and to build trust as a leader across all layers of my organization. And so I always say I come to work as myself. What you see here is what I do at home with my kids and my family. I'm not a different person. And so building trust with teams as a leader and being authentic and saying, I don't know, I'm stuck, or here's what I think, then enables this two-way conversation that has been built before. It didn't emerge just now.
Hey, Monica, what a great answer. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You good?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
This is a really good question from Stephen Gold. Steve's a great friend and a supporter of HMG, a CIO of the Year recipient. Steve was formerly at CVS and more recently at Hudson Bay. Steve says, between working at home, managing 30,000 people, and having your family at home, how do you make time for yourself to ensure you're always well charged as a leader and, you're really, you're living healthy,
Yeah.
balanced life?
Hey, Steve, congratulations. Thanks for your question. And so I think that's one where I'm not doing well at, to be totally honest. I do meditate. I think that is super, super important. And I think that has enabled me to be the best I can be in these times. But I have to say that when you're having phone calls into the middle of the night and then you wake up at 5 and you're, having phone calls again and you're constantly on, and not just being on, but worried, I think about two things. One is meditation. Two, I also think about flushing my mind. I write everything down because that helps me take the burden of keeping it all in my brain. And I have, so you will laugh, but I'll give you one of my tips. I have a Kanban board in my home desk area, and I have, sticky notes of work streams I need to do. And I actually have a process where I share that with my kids. So there's this accountability locally at home. And I have them help me take them off, the ones that I was able to achieve. I think it's fun for them because they see that mommy's at home, but she's working. She's got these things on her list to do, and she's achieving them. And sometimes I don't achieve them, and we have a conversation about failure. But also personally, back to your question about personal balance and mental well-being, I think having a list, writing things down, being realistic with myself on what is achievable, what isn't. Also, I have an incredible team. I am so thankful for them because we are in this together. I'm not doing this by myself. This is not.
Hey, Monica, this has been awesome. We're literally, we got 30 seconds to wrap up. I want to thank you very, very much. This goes down as an all-star interview, and you were fantastic. I'd share with the network if you're interested in being interviewed. Steve Gold, I'd love to interview you here soon. You were awesome, and I'd like to nominate you as one of the top tech leaders for the 2021 HMG Recognized Leader Awards program.
Oh, thank you so much.
Great job, Monica. Thanks. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.